Anders Fogh Rasmussen, welcome to Europe Today. I just want to ask you about the situation with NATO at the moment. You have a president of the United States consistently denigrating the alliance, saying it's a paper tiger, saying even Putin thinks like this, at the same time removing sanctions against Russian oil. How bad is the situation?
I consider it the worst challenge for NATO during the history of a very successful alliance. So I think we in Europe should conclude we have to be able to stand on our own feet. So we should strengthen our defense, build on a coalition of the willing that could build a strong European pillar within NATO. We need a more European NATO.
How does that work? First of all, time is of the essence. Do we have the time at the moment when there's such a concerns around access to military equipment and so on? And then how does it work within NATO? Does that mean that you're sort of sidelined in the United States? Would the United States have to agree to that?
No, it's not sidelining the United States. The United States has expressed the will itself to see Europe take care of itself. So it's not a contradiction with the American thinking, and I think a strengthening of the European pillar would also strengthen NATO as such. And I think the best way to strengthen the European pillar within NATO would be to build a coalition of the willing, including Ukraine. So far we have been speaking about a coalition of the willing to help Ukraine, but I think Ukraine has demonstrated so much capability militarily, so battle-tested military capabilities, that Ukraine could be an asset we can use building a new European security architecture.
And what about the time-wise? Because the military-industrial base is very much at a low level right now, where there's real concerns about access to military equipment, particularly since the war in Iran.
The timeline is of the essence, and we need to accelerate our building up a stronger defense industrial base. We need to produce weapons and ammunition much, much faster than in the past. And we should also accelerate our attempts to achieve the 5% goal that NATO decided last year, that each ally should invest at least 5% of GDP in defense. I think instead of saying we should achieve that by 2035, we should do it already by 2030.
You're obviously the former Prime Minister of Denmark, so you're European. Where do you stand then on the issue of European preference? Because the Europeans are going to be spending a colossal amount of money on defence now. Should it all be mainly going to the European defence industry for a number of reasons, not just because obviously the money's coming from Europe and should be spent in Europe, but also because of concerns about the hostile nature of the United States these days?
Yeah, but my point is the following. We should purchase weapons and ammunition where it is right now, because time is of the essence. But in a longer-term perspective, we should be capable of producing much more on our own in Europe. We cannot be dependent on other countries. We should reduce our dependency on foreign actors like the United States, but also other countries. We should not be naive. So in certain cases, I would give preference to European weapons and ammunition.
Did you ever think you'd see the day where you're saying that you have to, that NATO should and Europe should move away from the United States in such a way that we need to be careful not to be naive? I mean, such is the nature of the relationship with the US right now.
Well, for me, this has been a very painful process. Since childhood, I have admired the United States. I saw the United States as a natural leader of the free world. As Prime Minister of Denmark, I worked closely with the then President George W. Bush. As NATO Secretary General, I worked closely with President Obama. I've always considered the United States the closest ally, not only of Denmark, but of Europe as such. For me, it's been painful to conclude that we have to reduce our dependence on the United States. But that is the state of affairs today.
And how was it then when you were watching what was happening with Greenland, with the President of the United States saying they needed to take Greenland, with the denigration of the sacrifices made by Danish troops in Afghanistan, then on par with the sacrifices of the United States only?
Yeah, but it was unheard that the leader of the biggest ally within a collective defense organization threatens another ally with the aim to grasp land by force. Had that happened, it would be the end of NATO. It doesn't make sense to have a collective defense organization where the biggest ally threatens another ally. Fortunately, President Trump backed off that threat, and now we have embarked on a more traditional diplomatic path. And I think we can accommodate his legitimate concerns without military attacks on Greenland and Denmark. For instance, when it comes to defending the Arctic, including Greenland, I fully agree. We should have a stronger military presence in the Arctic and in Greenland. That can be accommodated within the existing defense agreement between Denmark and the US. And NATO has developed an Arctic strategy, paving the way for more permanent military presence in the Arctic.
But I suppose the lesson is that the United States isn't the ally that you once thought it was.
Obviously, things have changed, and we have to change our strategies and our thinking similarly, and that's why my conclusion is we should build a coalition of the willing, a group of European countries that are capable and willing to do what is needed to defend Europe.
Just before I let you go, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz is changing every hour, and the ceasefire looks like it may be extended, but there's no changes to actually reopening the strait. What do you think needs to be done now? I mean, from a NATO perspective, they're saying we can only be there once the hostilities have come to an end. But how does this situation get resolved?
Well, I think two strategic mistakes were made right from the beginning. President Trump launched the war without consulting his allies, and he cannot expect allies to clear up the mess if they are not involved in launching the conflict. But the Europeans made the strategic mistake to declare that this war is not Europe's war, because the consequences are severe when it comes to energy prices and in other respects for all of us. So we are in this together. I think we should use the opportunity to tell Trump, okay, we will help you out of this mess, provided that you do not impose tariffs on Europe, your allies, provided that you will stay engaged in Europe, including continue to help Ukraine. Something for something.
Yeah, transactional.
That's a transactional approach. Time has come to play hardball.
Yeah.
Time for flattering is over.
Do you think that it's too late for that? I mean, obviously you said that Trump should have consulted his allies. The likelihood is those allies would have said, we are not engaging in hostilities with Iran. Maybe there's concerns about the fact that maybe there isn't enough evidence to say that Iran was a threat. Second of all, the war in Iran was deeply unpopular all across Europe. So these governments have to deal with their constituents and their voters as well. But OK, taking that aside, is it too late for Europe to now maybe do an about face and say, OK, let's work on it together?
No, I think actually Europe should use this situation as a leverage to change the relationship between Europe and the United States. we should speak to President Trump the same way as he speaks to us. And that's why my proposal would be for Europe to correct the mistake they made when they declared this war is not our war, and try to get the best out of this for Europe.
Okay, just final question then. Who do you propose should speak to Donald Trump in the way he speaks to us? Would you suggest Mark Rutte maybe changes his tone a little bit? Or would you say someone like the President of France or maybe Meloni?
Well, I would leave it to the political leaders to decide. We have, in the past, we have seen European delegations meet up in the White House. My point is just this. Trump only respects a firm stance, and that's why I say time for flattering is over.
And then just final question, because you're here for the space conference. Can you explain a little bit about the importance of space sovereignty and space in relation to the future of defence?
We have seen in the wars in both Ukraine and Iran how important satellites are for the defense. Space has been weaponized, so it's dangerous for Europe to be dependent on other actors when it comes to space. And the fact is, today, America has 10 times as many satellites as Europe. And in Europe, we are not able to launch satellites ourselves, at least only at a very, very slow pace. So we have to invest in more satellites, in more launchers, and we also have to introduce robust regulation to ensure an equitable access to space so that space will not be monopolized by erratic American billionaires.
Okay, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, thank you very much for joining us on Europe Today.
Thank you for having me.